Yo. Welcome back to the Mortgage Mayhem Podcast. It is the Tuesday before Thanksgiving. Let me put my Thanksgiving stuff up here for y'all peoples. Happy Thanksgiving to those who will be celebrating Thanksgiving. I think it's on Thursday. I wish you and your family well. Happy holidays to all. First of all, this is G Money, your humble host, and we're back with another action-packed episode. It's been kind of crazy for the past couple of weeks. I've been sick. I know you've heard this spiel. I'm sucking on pause on the throat loxygen right now, just from the effects of all the sinus infection, drainage, all that stupid stuff that comes along with that. And last week we had all kind of technical difficulties. We were able to get the actual interview in, which was great. Got a lot of good positive feedback from that interview. And we're here, just to kind of get into some of these hot topics, a couple mortgage hacks, and then, we're going to go ahead and get up and out of here. And then we'll be back next week after Thanksgiving. So just wanted to kind of, let's come on, kind of get through a couple things, talk about a couple things. Yesterday was great. Passed out over 250 turkeys in the Flint, Michigan area. Went to 4 different schools. That was just outstanding. My mom's birthday, heavenly birthday, was the other day as well. So got a chance to, recognize her, and got a lot of positive feedback from all my Facebook family. So, I thank you guys for that. Sometimes, you kind of be in yesterday for whatever reason, or not yesterday, but the day before yesterday on Monday, Sunday, it kind of just hit me all of a sudden. And it takes moments like that for you to get some, good positive feedback from a lot of different people, a lot of calls, a lot of text messages, a lot of messages via Facebook. So thanks to all folks who reached out, and didn't forget about you up there, Mom Dukes. And of course, I never will. Missed you, missing you extremely lot. And then tomorrow we'll go down and spend some time at the gravesite, or Thursday morning, Thanksgiving morning. We'll do that. You got these things called grave blankets. I need to see what it looks like. And it's kind of like a thing with all kind of flowers and ribbons, and what they call it, a grave blanket. So we'll go down on Thursday and spend some time with her on Thanksgiving morning, and continue on with life. Allow life to just keep lifing. But anyway, let's get this thing going. Let me get all these Thanksgiving pies, hats, all the stuff that's turkeys that's around me. Let's get that off the screen, and let's get into this business. All right, let's go. Okay.
Welcome to the Mortgage Mayhem Podcast, where the mortgage game meets real life, real talk, and a whole lot of chaos. We break down the deals, the drama, and the data behind the scenes of real estate finance, with a twist of street smarts, savvy, and a touch of madness. Before we dive in, here's the deal. The Mortgage Mayhem Podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only. We are not attorneys, CPAs, or licensed financial advisors, and nothing you hear on this show should be taken as legal, financial, or investment advice. Always consult a licensed professional before making financial decisions.
All right. Hopefully everybody heard that. Make sure that that's the case. You want to make sure you're getting professional. You're getting professional information here, but you always want to go and seek your own professional information. That way, you're covering all your bases. Anyway, let's get into this thing. As millions, and I say millions, Americans head home for this holiday. Bank Rate's latest survey finds that there's one dinner topic that will likely generate more heartburn than the typical conversation taboos about politics or religion. It is money. The National Opinion Poll found that about 3 in 5 U.S. adults, about 61%, said that they would be uncomfortable talking about their bank account balances with family members or close friends. And other financial subjects like credit card debt, annual salaries don't spark much enthusiasm either. In comparison, Bank Rate's financial taboo survey found that about 1 in 4 were similarly uncomfortable sharing their political, 24% views, and nearly 1 in 5 were resistant to sharing their religious views. That's 18%. Talking about money may feel weird, but Kristen Benz, Director of Personal Finance and Retirement Planning at Morningstar, thinks it's worth it to push through the unease. Okay, let's talk shop. I mean, most folks never been, all that open to talk about, their finances for whatever reason. I mean, it's a lot of different reasons. Folks just like to keep, those types of things close to the vest. They don't really want people knowing how they're doing financially because what they think they'll be judged. I think a lot of this just has a lot to do with the judgment. Folks just kind of look at you some kind of way or some certain kind of way, based off of your income, based off of, how you live it. And most people just kind of like to fly under the radar when it comes to their monies and their money issues. Especially at Thanksgiving when you're around with your family and friends. It's more eating, more watching sports, more catching up, more genuine love and loving on each other than talking about what's your credit score, which conversations of finances should be spoken about, because how are you going to kind of build generational wealth if nobody's on the same page? Is everybody kind of out here doing their own thing? And the big thing that should be happening is we should be talking to each other, because you never know. This person might have this skill set, this person might have that skill set. And just because you are being bashful at Thanksgiving, you could have your future investor sitting right next to you. Or you could have your future partner sitting right next to you. I know people say family is hard, doing business with family. I kind of agree with that to a certain degree, but business is business. If you take care of the business and you're upfront with everybody and everything, then that shouldn't be an issue. Especially in these days and times, you should really be having those hard conversations with the ones that you love, because, together you can do some big things. So, I know this Thanksgiving, we're going to be around the table and we're going to be talking shop, because we're doing business. We got businesses, that's, growing. We're generating new businesses, so we're going to be talking that ish. And we're going to be trying to figure out how we can get better as a business. And we're going to be talking, to each other in some kind of capacity to find out, how we can be of some help, how you can be of some help to us. So I think although that number of 61% is high, I think, you got to start having those conversations, and, having them with a complete stranger, at the end of the day, what is that going to do for you? At least you're talking to people that you have some kind of, relationship with, some kind of trust factor. And then, like I said, you never know, who might have that idea, or that problem solving idea that you've been, wrecking your brain trying to figure out. And just by you opening up and asking a question to family members, you might get a treasure trove of information coming your way. So I say open up, talk that ish, and see if there's a way that you can, help build upon what you already got going on. All right. So let's keep it moving. All right. Let's go here. So here's another reason why you should be having these conversations. Half of young Americans are living with their parents, the highest rate since the Great Depression, according to a Pew Research Center analysis of Census Bureau data. The share of young adults living with their parents reached high historic levels in 2020. In July of that year, 52% of Americans aged 18 to 29 resided with one or both parents, a sharp increase from 47% in February. This surge translated to 26.6 million young adults, an unprecedented figure in modern times. The rise occurred across all racial and ethnic groups, men and women, and in both urban and rural areas. The trend was particularly strong among younger adults 18 to 24, and while and white young adults. While living with parents has become a common transitional phase for many, the 2020 spike reflected broader economic and social disruptions, including the COVID-19 pandemic, widespread job losses, and the closure of college campuses. Before 2020, the previous high point came in 1940, when 48% of young adults lived at home during the tail end of the Great Depression. Pew researchers note that although exact peak during the 1930s is unknown, the 2020 level likely surpassed any rate since that era. This trend underscores how deeply economic instability and housing affordability continues to shape the lives of young Americans, redefining what adulthood looks like in the 21st century. Okay, let's talk about that. All right, so I think a lot. I think a lot of it did have to do with COVID. A lot of people, the world just kind of went haywire during COVID, and then after COVID, it took a while for things to kind of snap back. And I don't necessarily know that they've actually all snapped back. Even at this point, and youngins for whatever reason, I don't know. I just feel like they're not built like how we used to be built, where, I was out the house at 17 and didn't ever come back. And I know a lot of times people want to just kind of kick their kids out as soon as they turn 18. And what you find out, a lot of times these kids aren't ready, especially the new age kids. They've been spoiled, they've been, pampered too. They've been coddled for the most part. And when it's time to go face the real world, it just seems like it's a complete nightmare to them. The getting out there and figuring it out, life skills is not, something that a lot of these young adults, especially from the age of 18 to 24, possess. You just don't want to throw your kids away. So I think a lot of times parents is just kind of biting the bullet in hopes that their children could figure out a way. A lot of times these kids are college educated. Sometimes they have their degrees, and they just kind of back at home trying to get things figured out. And it's tough out here in these streets. So I kind of get it, but at the same time, parents, we gotta kind of instill into our children that the only way they're going to kind of figure out the ways of the world is to get out there and start living, in the trenches of the ways of the world. Not to say that as parents you can't continue to help until they get it all figured out. And I'm not saying, not have them in your home until they get it all figured out. But at some point, you have to become a real live adult. And real live adults, the many that has come before this generation, had to step out there on faith and get it figured out and create a life for themselves. Because at the end of the day, the kids, they want their privacy, they want a life for themselves, and it's kind of hard for them to be able to do that if they're living up under somebody else's roof, especially the parents' roof. Because parents aren't going to just be allowing you to do your ish under their roof. compared to if you had your own room, your own roof, you could kind of do what it is that you want to do. So I agree that, it's not a good thing to just kick them out the house. Like, you 18, go, like how it used to be back in the day. Because like I said, it's a kind of different world. It's different, kids, it's just different. And you gotta be cognizant of that, because you don't want your kids to be out here just flailing in the wind and putting themselves in harm's way just because you're trying to live by old school rules. So watch over your kids, but guide them, give them the correct information, and allow them to spread their wings accordingly. I'm not saying coddle them. I'm not saying just allow them to be doing whatever they want to do, not handling their business. No, not that. I'm saying if they're going to be in your house, make sure they're handling their business, and make sure that you're helping them to come up with a plan so they can get out in the world and start living their best life. And as parents, you can, become those empty nesters, and you can, start doing the things that you want to do because you've raised them, you've put them through school, you did all the things that you needed to do. Now it's time for you to get to doing some living outside of that. And, it's kind of hard to do that when they're still in the house. All right. So we'll keep it moving. All right. Where are we at here? All right. So getting married by 30 used to be the norm for most men, but now being married before 30 makes you stand out in the pack. Um, I have a lot to say about that. I mean, I kind of see it too. I mean, people are not really getting married at a young age anymore. It's kind of, folks are trying to figure out their careers. Like, it's a new world out here. Most, women, most men are still out here, in these streets, having fun, doing they big one too, and settling down. They start to kind of look at that at the age of 30 and above. In their 20s, nah, they're not trying. They're trying to live their best lives. They're trying to still be in the clubs. They're trying to, they're still trying to be players. It's just tough for folks to get committed to each other, especially to the level of marriage compared to back in the day, 20s, folks was getting married 21 or 2, and then they come to find out 30s and spent all they pretty much prime time in marriages, and then they get in their 30s and they figure out, like, man, I wish I would have kind of waited, and then they end up doing something else, and then we wonder why the divorce rate is so high. So I would say 30 plus is a good age, because in your 20s you're really trying to figure this thing out. Back then, you had a couple kids by the time you're 30. Now these kids, like we just got through talking about, they're still in the house at mid-20s, still in their parents' house in the mid-20s. So they need a little bit more time from the looks of it to figure things out. Then they can get out into the world in their 30s. They kind of got their career figured out, so to speak, and then they can link up with somebody like-minded and ride off into the sun. So I'm not against that 30 plus rule, because I really feel like your 20s is really your maturing time. You kind of get the ish out your system, so to speak. So yeah, 30 plus, I'm kind of feeling that. You know what I'm saying? All right, let's keep it moving. All right. Let's see. Is that what we want? We got Rubio. Da, 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 da. Nope, that's not it. All right. I know we didn't get a chance to talk about this, but this was kind of crazy to me, because we've been in the world for so long, right? Um, and the U.S. has has ended production of the penny after 232 years. You know what I'm saying? So, according to reports, the United States Mints will cease producing new pennies after more than 2 centuries in circulation, while existing pennies will remain legal tender and continue to circulate. The Mint has placed its final order of penny blanks, and production will stop once that inventory is used up. So, how do y'all feel about that? No more pennies. I mean, it's almost like we almost at that point where it ain't gonna just be pennies. Change in general. It's not like it used to be. Even the dollar bills. I mean, I keep some dollar bills, but for the most part, you reaching with your phone, Apple Pay, it's really turning into a digital currency, type of world. I mean, you might keep some cash every now and then, but for the most part, you're dealing with debit, you're dealing with credit, and that's just kind of the ways of the world. That's kind of how the world is set up. When you go into a store, you just grabbing your phone, slapping your phone on, their payment system, and you keep it moving. Ain't nobody sitting there counting 10, 20, 30, 40. It's just we're too technology advanced to do that anymore. It feels prehistoric to even have money. I mean, dollar bills, so to speak, unless you're in the strip club and tossing it up. Of course, you're gonna have them dollar bills then. But just your everyday, it's digital currency, baby. So pennies today will probably be nickels and dimes in the near future, and then quarters, and then we're pretty much out of there, right? So I think pennies the first to fall, and then I think all the rest of the change currency will follow. So we'll keep an eye on it, and we'll let you know, if something else comes down the pike, so to speak. All right, let's keep it moving. All right, so what is Trump administration doing? What are they doing? All right, so the Trump administration introduces new visa guidelines targeting applicants' health. The Trump administration has implemented new visa guidelines allowing U.S. consulates to consider applicants' health, including conditions such as obesity, when deciding whether to approve or deny your visa. Under the new policy, a consular office can evaluate whether an individual might become a public charge, meaning someone likely to rely on government funding healthcare or social services. This means applicants who are overweight, who have chronic health issues like diabetes or health disease could face additional scrutiny during the visa process. Supporters of the policy argues it helps protect U.S. taxpayers from potential healthcare costs, while critics say it unfairly discriminates against poor or less healthy applicants, especially those from countries with limited access to mental or medical care. The guidance does not automatically bar overweight applicants, but it gives U.S. officials broader discretions to deny visas based on health concerns and financial risk factors. The rule is part of a wider effort by the Trump administration to tighten immigration standards and prioritize self-sufficient applicants. Once again, elections have consequences. So, this is a part of their general overall sweep of, targeting, folks who ain't from this country. And they're just trying all their, thoughts and things that they probably thought could never happen, because, they just didn't think someone would get into power and push forward this kind of an agenda. they're getting their big ones off right now, right today. And this is a part of it as well. So, a lot of them aren't healthy, the ones who are putting forth these laws, but in their perfect little world, they want to paint their pictures as perfect as possible. And this is one of them. If you're going to come here, we want you in idea shape. We don't want you, in any kind of way coming here, despite your country where you might be coming from, where, nutrition could be on the back burner. You got to just eat to survive. You don't really have the right medical care to, target or help with diabetes or anything of that nature. So, you know, elections have consequences, folks. That's what I'm saying. When it's time to, vote for, things that make sense and not things that doesn't, line up with our values. That's why you gotta get your ASS out there and let your vote be heard. You can't be sitting on the sidelines, because when you sit on the sidelines, these are the things that's going to happen. You're going to get folks who are lunatics into positions of power, and they're going to put forth their own magical, dream of how the world is supposed to be, knowing that it's impossible with the amount of folks we have in the world, the amount of different nationalities we have in the world, amount of different religious, vigor that folks have about their religion in the world. So yeah, these are the consequences. So we'll keep our eye on it, and we'll let you know what we come up with if something else comes down the pike. All right, let's keep this thing moving. Okay, let's talk about HBCUs for a quick seconds. I seen this and I just wanted to kind of just touch on it real quick. Oh, excuse me. Let's talk about these endowments at these HBCUs, because it's just kind of, I didn't know. So we're going to just talk about 5 HBCUs with the largest endowments curated. All right, let's start with, number 5, Meharry Medical College. Number 4, Morehouse College. These are the ones who has the biggest endowments. Number 3, Hampton University. Number 2, Spelman College. And number 1, Howard University. At Meharry, their endowment is $199.4 million. At Morehouse, their endowment is $278 million. At Hampton University, their endowment is $379.9 million. At Spelman, their endowment is $570.8 million. And then at Howard, their endowment is $806.4 million. Right? So let's talk about this for a minute. All right, so if you really sit back and think about it, the 5 universities that I just talked about, they are the pristine universities in the HBCU category. And now I see why. The alumni, from the looks of it, are giving back in a major way. You don't never hear anything, financially wrong with any of these universities. Hampton, Morehouse, Meharry. Meharry is a medical college. Morehouse is Morehouse. Hampton's, Hampton, out on the, out on the ocean. Spelman, all girls. Some of the brightest minds, some of the greatest females ever came out of Spelman. So, when you're producing the best will find a way to give back so they can continue to produce the best. It's the same concept all these HBCUs should be taking on. Even at TSU, just producing some of the best. I don't know what their endowment is. they're going through so much as a state school. So, you never know. And most of these schools that we just mentioned are more kind of like on the private side. So we have to, this is the example that other HBCUs should follow. And I'm pretty sure these presidents can pick up the phone and find out exactly what these guys are doing. But I think the biggest part of what they're doing is staying in contact with their very successful alumni and making sure that those alumni are putting their money where their mouths are. And then not only that, the universities are curating those dollars to make sure that they're, staying in an endowment form where it could be, audited at any given time, because that's the key. You got to trust the folks who you're giving your money to. So a place like Hampton, Howard, Morehouse, Meharry, they apparently they trust the folks who are in charge of these endowments. This is a great thing to see. I just thought I would bring it up, just to kind of talk about it a little bit, because I think, these are the blueprints. These are the things that other HBCUs should be looking at, picking up these phones and finding out, what are you guys doing? How do we get our endowments into the millions? Howard's almost at a billion, at 806.4 million, or 200 million away from having $1 billion in their endowment. That's to be studied. I mean, somebody needs to study that. Somebody needs to study these 5 schools and pretty much put together the blueprint to facilitate that to these smaller schools so they can start taking a bite out of the apple. Not to say they're going to be at a billion, but if you got an HBCU that's had 0 in their endowment, they could get that up to 10 million. It starts somewhere. And I don't really know the gist of all of the schools and their endowments, but it starts somewhere. And these folks got the blueprint, is what I'm saying. All right, let's keep it moving. All right, let's talk about this. So the Ford CEO said he has 5,000 open mechanics jobs with 120K salaries. That's nearly twice the median U.S. salary. Farley warned that it's a sign of a much bigger problem. The country doesn't have enough people trained for hands-on skilled labor position. He added that Ford isn't the only one struggling. Excuse me. Oh my God. Companies across the U.S. are facing the same shortage of workers for technical and trade-based jobs. Let's talk about this for a quick second. So you got 5,000 open mechanic jobs out here paying over 120,000. We're going to have to get real. Like, the world's going to have to get real. Everybody think that even if you go to college and you trying to get these white collar jobs, they're not starting you off at 120,000. It's not happening. You're going to have to work to get into that 6-figure range. And what they're saying here is you can go get some skill training, and out the gate you can be at 120,000, and that's just out the gate. So 10-year career in that position, you're probably at 250, somewhere up in there, where you could take care of your family, invest, and just live a pretty good life. So we got to start looking at these trades. We got to make sure that we're getting the proper training to the folks who are realists, the ones who can't go to college, the ones who may not even like college, but don't really know what they're going to do with their lives. Here's a layup for you. Go get some training. If I'm pretty sure Ford, if you contacted Ford, they'll tell you exactly what to do because apparently they need help. And as they mentioned in this particular article, is other companies in the same boat as them. So we're gonna keep an eye on that because that's really we gotta understand that there's more ways to skin a cat, and you just not to say that you can't get educated. Even if you do go get a particular trade, that don't mean you can't go get a degree. At least at that point, most of these places will probably pay for you to go get a degree. And you can still have a degree and be making more than what you would be making if you just had the degree and no trade, no skills. So yeah, I just thought we'll bring attention to that because I think a lot of people are missing the boat on that. And unfortunately, that's going to hurt us as Americans because we're too busy running around thinking that these type of jobs are beneath us. And when you do the apples to apples comparison, they're blowing most straight out of college jobs that you're getting. They're kind of blowing them out the water with less time and less money spent. So you know, riddle me that. Um, you know, but anyway, we'll keep it moving. We ain't gonna spend too much time on that. I just think that was something we definitely needed to talk about because I think a lot of people are missing the boat on that. You know. Anyway, all right, let's keep it moving. All right, so foreclosures in America are up 19% in the month of October compared to a year ago. Foreclosure activity rose in October following several years of unusually low levels, according to new data released Thursday. Although the overall numbers remain relatively low, the steady increase could indicate growing pressures in the house market. Adam, a real estate data firm, reported that 36,766 properties across the U.S. had some form of foreclosure actions last month, whether a default notice, an auction date, or a bank repossession. That's a 3% increase from September and a 19% jump compared with October 2024, making the 8th month in a row of year over year growth. Foreclosures start the beginning of the process were up 6% from the previous month and 20% from a year earlier. Completed foreclosures surged 32% compared to last year. Despite the increases, Adam CEO Rob Barker noted that foreclosure levels are still far below historic peaks. He said the rise in numbers likely reflect a slow return to normal levels as the market shifts and some homeowners struggle with higher housing and borrowing costs. Florida, South Carolina, and Illinois recorded the highest foreclosure rates among states. Looking at major metro areas, Tampa, Jacksonville, and Orlando led the nation, followed by Riverside, California, and Cleveland. I mean, that's just the ways of the world. It's going to be some foreclosures because folks, losing their jobs, folks, bit off more than they could chew, but at the end of the day, unfortunately, when these things happen, it just opens up more opportunity for investors to swoop in and continue to build generational wealth. So yeah, I get it, and then you're talking some of these primetime areas that was hot as fish grease, like Tampa, Orlando, those hot, sunny areas, all these folks trying to have two homes, regular homes, summer homes or winter homes, so to speak. And, if you ain't balling like that, it'll catch up to you. It may sound good in the beginning when you're going about, I want a house in Tampa and I live in Michigan. I'm gonna go there in the wintertime, and then I'm gonna come. At the end of the day, you still, you know, you're taking care of two households, taking care of a household that you're there 6 months out of the year, and then even when you're gone, you still got to take care of because the mortgage don't stop, no matter what. So I can kind of see why some of these areas, looked all, bright eye and bushy tail, when you was picking them up. But these are the results of, those types of things. Illinois, I don't know what's going on there. That's one of the hot hit areas. But typically, these bigger states, Illinois, Michigan, when things start to unravel, you're going to start seeing them unravel in those particular areas first. And then from there, it just kind of, it kind of flattens out and spreads out to the rest of the country. All right. So we'll keep our eye on it, and we'll let you know. We'll let you know. We'll let you know. I got my eye on it because that's what I do all day, every day. So, once I start seeing investors going hard in the paint, then I'm going to know, yeah, it's a problem out there in the marketplace. And right now, I'm not really seeing that. So we'll keep our eye on it for sure. All right, let's keep it moving. My guy, Big Bob. NBA coach Chauncey Billups pleads not guilty an alleged poker scheme released on a $5 million bond. Portland Trail Blazers head coach Chauncey Billups pleaded not guilty Monday to charges tied to a scheme that allegedly lured unsuspecting gamblers into a mob-run fixed poker game. Prosecutors say the operation enticed players with the chance to sit at a table with the five-time NBA All-Star and others. Billups was released on a $5 million bond secured by property his wife and daughter put up in Colorado. Under his release conditions, Billups must avoid witnessing co-defendants and anyone connected to organized crime. He's also barred from gambling and must report any transactions over $25,000 except legal fees. He surrendered his passport and must notify pretrial services of any travel. Billups is also currently on leave from the Trail Blazers. Yeah, man. Chauncey, I mean, phew, he kind of effed up like majorly because not only is he like in trouble with the law, of course, he dealing with the folks that put them horse heads in your bed and can do things to your family. And I don't even know how Chauncey got caught up in that. Chauncey always seemed like he's been a stand-up dude, and all this is allegedly right now. So we're not putting any kind of hate on Chauncey because he could very well be innocent. But the fact that he's surrendering passports, putting up real estate, getting a $5 million bond, so that's $500,000. You got to put up. You got your family involved. It's just an ugly situation, all about gambling. As soon as they start the full-fledged online gambling, it's been pretty much downhill since. Folks is throwing games, and then it's just all kind of. Then you got mob involved, which is crazy because how they go. And then Chauncey could have just been in a compromising position where he had to do what he had to do, or can end up coming up stinking somewhere. So I don't know like what the relationship is. I wish him and his family all the luck in the world, but it's not looking pretty. But he put in, he basically said that he's innocent. So you in the United States, you're innocent until proven guilty. So we'll definitely keep our eye on Chauncey because that's just crazy. But we'll see what's up. All right, we'll keep it moving. Good luck, Chauncey, man. All right, let's go here. Talk about Shador a little bit. Shador he been a hot topic since Sunday. His first, first Browns quarterback to win their first career start in 26 years. The Browns quarterbacks were 0-17 in their first starts until, stepped on the field and did his 1-2. The game wasn't televised here, but, of course, by now we have seen all the highlights. And, man, I just feel like Shador when you got that confidence, that's why I tell everybody, kids included, it's about confidence. At the end of the day, you can be arrogant but humble, arrogant in the way you think about yourself and humbly outwardly to the world. And I think that's that itch that Shador got on him, and I think that rubs, the white folks, or the folks with power. I think it rubs them the wrong way, even though it's the right way to rub them, because it's ain't nobody gonna just be sitting around, just allowing you to dictate their confidence. That's just not about to happen. So for him to just step up to the plate, keep his head down, stay humble during the process when, the entire world has been looking and having opinions about, this, and you got folks saying this about him, you got folks mad at his daddy, you got his brother, getting cut from Tampa Bay. So and then on top of that, his dad's just super sick, going through surgeries and all kinds of things. And as a family unit, it seems like they put God first, which is excellent. But more so than anything, it shows that they have genuine love and they protect each other and they ride for each other. And just to see this young black kid, stepping up and handling this business like he's supposed to, this is just a beautiful thing. I just can't wait to see, the next game. He was asked to be the starter for this next up and coming game at San Francisco. So, I think that's going to be a televised game. As a matter of fact, it is going to be a televised game. So, a lot of people, a lot of aunties out there rooting for Shador, a lot of unks out there rooting for Shador. And it ain't just black people. It's all across. It's to the point where, I know Shador probably don't want that kind of, love on his jacket, but you got the president of the United States chiming in. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, Shador been doing this big one, man. He's been doing it from, a young kid through, then, it's just everything that he's done. He went from, charter schools, then he went to HBCU, then he went to, PWI, and now he's in the NFL, and they hating. But at the end of the day, you can't stop greatness. It's going to, the cream's going to rise to the top. And that's exactly what's happening here. Shador just got to be careful, got to be mindful in the world that he's playing in. He's got to play, you got to play the game. His daddy played the game to the point where, although he's been great at everything, these are some of the repercussions when you great, they'll take it out on you, out on your loved ones. If they can't get you, they'll try to get your loved ones. And in this case, Shador is not allowing it to happen. You cannot break this kid down. And I love it. I love watching it. I love seeing it. And I got nothing but all praises due, to him and his family. And I'm going to continue to talk about it. Even though I lived in Cleveland at one point, I ain't a Cleveland Browns fan, but I'm a number 12 fan. That's for sure. So we'll keep our eyes on it. And we'll get back to you if anything comes down the pike that we need to report. All right. Let's keep it moving. let's talk about this because they tried to railroad the sister. Um, so a federal judge has dismissed criminal cases against former FBI director James Comey and New York Attorney General Letitia James, ruling that the prosecutors who secured the indictments, Trump ally and ex-personal attorney Lindsay Halligan, had no lawful authority to bring forth the charges. U.S. District Judge Cameron Curry found that Halligan's appointment as interim U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia was invalid, making everything she did in that role, including presenting the cases to a grand jury, unconstitutional. Halligan, who had no prosecutorial experience, was appointed at President Trump's urging after he pushed Attorney General Pam Bondi to pursue Comey, James, and other political rivals. Because Halligan was the sole prosecutor who handled both grand jury proceedings, Kerry said the indictments were fundamentally flawed. She issued nearly identical rulings for Comey and James, calling the situation unique and unprecedented. Both dismissals were entered into prejudice, meaning the charges could be refiled if a legitimate prosecutor takes over. The Justice Department argued the appointment was legal, describing the issues as a mere paperwork error, but the judge rejected that claim. The ruling may also affect other cases tied to disputed U.S. attorney appointments, similar to the legal turmoil involving Alina Habba's appointment in New Jersey. Comey and James both maintain their innocence. Comey's teams called the case politically driven, while James said she was grateful the baseless charges were thrown out. Halligan's appointment came after Trump forced out the prior nominee, Eric Sibbert, who had resisted political motivation prosecutions. Federal law allows interim U.S. attorneys to serve only 120 days unless confirmed by the Senate, and Comey's lawyers argue that after Siebert's removal, the authority to appoint this replacement belonged to federal judges, not Bondi or Trump. The Justice Department is expected to appeal as similar appointment disputes ripple across multiple states. Well, I mean, once again, elections have consequences. And you know who's in the White House. He ain't trying to follow no kind of rules. He trying to people that he felt like did him damage, and these two, he felt like did him damage, especially the sister up in New York. She not only tried to take him down, she took him down. He got some he got some felonies behind her, bringing forth his ish that he was doing in New York. So he ain't liking her at all. But at the end of the day, if you're doing what you're supposed to do, and despite who's in charge and who has power, the cream gonna rise to the top. They're gonna figure out if what you're saying is true or what you're saying is some BS. And in this case, they found out what they were saying was some BS. And the way they went about it was even crazier. They were doing behind the scenes, and the judge, at the end of the day, I don't know how they thought that the judge wasn't going to sit there, and it was a judge that was a Trump appointee judge, but at the end of the day, she looked at all this and was like, you mofos is crazy. We are not about to prosecute these folks and have these folks suing everybody out the yin yang on some BS that y'all done did, and y'all know that it wasn't the right, way to go when it comes to bringing forth the case, to this particular judge. So the judge threw it out. Of course, everybody's up in arms about it. They're going to do this, they're going to do that, and at the end of the day, they ain't going to do anything because ain't no prosecutor going to take on these cases because they know they can't win, especially now. When they see that this judge then kicked it out, they see that the grand jury was like, what the hell? Who are you, lady, that is supposed to be, a lawyer representing the United States, and you over here doing your job half-ass. So it's it's he may try to do something, but for the most part, I think he got his smack in the face on this. I think with him, just to take them through the motions of having to hire attorneys, having to spend money, having to spend time, having to have their name all over the papers, all over the news, is enough for him. If they don't get found guilty or whatever the case may be, he don't care. He done already took them through the ringer. He done already had them all on the news and already had them all on all the social media sites and everything. So I think he might live with that. So we'll keep an eye out on him. If something happens, we'll let you know. All right. All right, let's keep it moving. Not you, Shador. All right, let's talk about these groceries. So the U.S. grocery prices have climbed to the highest levels ever recorded. A typical family of four is now spending about $1,030 a month on groceries, based on data from the Urban Institute. The Bureau of Labor Statistics and USDA, as of mid to late 2025, that's about a 37% increase. Still going up, well, since 2017, I'm sorry. Even though overall food inflation is starting to cool off, the cost of eating at home is still going up each year, rising around 2.7% as of August 2025. Items like coffee and beef have especially seen big jumps in price since 2024. The USDA September's 2025 food plans show that depending on a family's grocery habits, monthly costs for a family of four can range from $1,002 to $1,631. These rising prices come from issues like labor costs, fuel, farm inputs, supply chain problems, and broader inflation. Because of this, more people are trying to save money by planning meals, choosing store brands, shopping at discount stores, using coupons and reward programs, and trying apps that help track prices. So, it is what it is. We all knew groceries was high. They've been high for a minute. Once again, elections have consequences. One of the main things that this president came in saying was he was going to try to increase these grocery costs. And, we in that mix where the costs aren't going down, they're steady going up. And it's just one of them things. So we'll keep our eye on the groceries. There's not really much we can do, but in hopes that these prices will go down. But this is a bigger problem. This ain't really some you can just there's nothing you can do. This is gonna have to be worked systematically from within, and then from within, whatever's done, the outcome of what was worked on within can ease some of these burdens, can ease some of this inflation, can ease some of these prices. So we'll keep our eyes on it, and we'll get back to you on that one, let you know if anything comes down the pipe. All right. All right. Last but not least, I thought we would bring forth this because I just study why banks never teach you that adding just a fifth of your payment kills 10 years off of your mortgage, right? Because it destroys the bank's business model. A 30-year mortgage isn't designed for your convenience. It's engineered to pull six figures in interest out of your pocket slowly, quietly, and predictably. But the moment you divide your principal and interest payments by 5 and send that amount as principal only, the entire system breaks. Interest collapse. The timeline collapses. Their 100,000 plus payday disappears. No refinancing, no paperwork, no approvals, just math that hope you that this is just math that they hope you never learn. This is a strategy banks bury in silence because the fastest way to beat them is to stop playing their timeline. Just think about that for a second, folks. This is the play. If you just add a fifth of a payment to your mortgage principal and interest payment every month, then you cut your 30-year mortgage down to potentially 20 years. And it just makes sense. This is like the biggest scam of the world, because just look around you. Every house you pretty much see has at least a 30-year mortgage on it. So that's six figures, six figures, six figures in interest payments that's going to each and every one of these banks within a lifetime. Most people don't even live 30 years in the home that they purchased because they pass away before the 30 years are even up. So they leave the property to their kids, and their kids end up continuing on with the scheme, with the scam, to the point where six figures is going to, like they said, the timeline collapse, right? And what they do is they pull the six figures in interest out of your pocket slowly, quietly, predictably. And nobody says anything because it's just become the ways of the world. Now they're talking about 40-year, 50-year, just imagine how much interest you getting on a 50-year mortgage. So that 100,000 or six figures goes up to, almost $500,000 in interest. So this is like one of the, we're going to keep bringing this up pretty much every episode, because this is the key right here. If you can lock into this, then you don't have to worry about, like they say, refinance, and you got to worry about no paperwork. You got to worry about no approval. The math is all you need to learn. And how you learn that is exactly what I just said, right? Here it is. Just add 1/5 of your payment, and that kills 10 years. And make sure you add it to the principal and interest, right? So we'll keep bringing this up. We're probably going to talk about this every episode, because I think this is the key to folks becoming a little bit more financially independent with their real estate quicker than if they just continue to follow, what has been set up for everybody, as of today. All right. All right. So that's the end of all the nice little hot topics. Let's talk about our 4 mortgage hacks. And then we're going to jump out of here, and we're going to be back next week. We're going to allow everybody to enjoy their Thanksgiving. Hopefully that everybody does. Hopefully there ain't no family fights, no family squabbles, and it could be a peaceful Thanksgiving. Everybody have great food, right? All right, so hack number 1, the property split strategy. Instead of buying one large home, 2 buyers team up, buy a duplex, split ownership with a legal fractional deed, and refinance separately after 12 months. Both get lower costs, lower down payments, and instant equity pathways. That's a good hack, folks. Hack number 2, equity roll-up HELOC ladder. Using HELOC on the property, number 1, to buy the property. Number 2, after renovating the property, pull a HELOC on that property to pay off the first. Repeating this builds a cash-free expansion ladder using rotator lines instead of cash. That's a great hack right there, folks. Get involved with these HELOCs. These HELOCs are great. It's almost like you have a credit card that you can continue to run up, pay off, to help you in all your buying and renovating, real estate investments, right? All right, so hack number 3, contract assignment insurance. Investors can now insure their assignment contracts through third-party compliance firms, protecting the assignment fee even if the end buyer backs out. Most investors don't know this exists. I didn't know it exists. So the contract assignment insurance is something new I've never heard of before, but we're going to do some more deep diving on that because that's major, right? All right, so hack number 4, the credit partner tax play. A high credit partner qualifies for the mortgage, right? And then a low credit investor handles the rehab. Both use a structured joint venture, so the low credit partner gets the depreciation write off, and the high credit partner gets the interest deduction. Both is a win win, right? This is kind of what they've been doing in the fix and flip world for a long time. It's usually one has credit, one has the ability to do the rehab. They come together, and that's a way that they can get the deal done. So this has been around. It's just the write-offs hasn't been the write-off and the depreciation hasn't been a part of that until now, right? So keep this and keep all 4 of these hacks. Right now, we done probably gave you, we on what, show 35, 36 now. We give you 4 of these each show. So you got uh, a glossary of real estate hacks that you could tap into um, as you continue to build your portfolio, or if you're going to become a first time investor, right? All right, so that's our 4 hacks, and we're going to wrap up today's episode of Mortgage Mayhem. We covered a lot: rising foreclosure activities. I'm losing my voice, folks, so excuse me. Exploding living costs, and why the American dream is now a $5 million journey. If you got value from today's episode, make sure you share it, rate it, and tap in for next week's show, um, where we turn the news into knowledge and the knowledge into money. I'm your humble host, G Money. Stay smart, stay ready, and stay in the game. All right. Have a great holiday, folks. We'll see you guys next week.